Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Living Astrology. It's time to grab your cup of coffee or your tea, sit back and relax so we can chat about all of the crazy things happening this week, up in the stars, that is. And it all might not be so crazy, it could just be interesting. One of my other favorite words to describe what happens up in the stars. As this week we have not so much planets moving in or out of signs like we did last week or, big changes, but what we have are these coming together of planets in what we call squares. And squares are always a challenging aspect pattern, right? When we talk about square, conjunction, opposition, what we're talking about is the relationship really between the two planets. And it's a geometric relationship for sure, which is why we describe them as angles or as we describe them as degrees that they're separated. But what we're really talking about is how that particular geometric relationship creates a smooth flow of information between the planets or how it creates challenges, right? So some create a smooth ease and a flow of energy, and others create this kind of feeling of, tension or aggravation, right? Or scritchiness, another one of my favorite words to use. So this week we happen to have more of the scritchy sorts of transits happening. So I want to make sure everybody understands what they mean. And actually, yesterday is when we had the first one, and they don't clear up like that day. Most of these are activated and last for a couple of days. You might have a day or two coming, a day or two of it activated by the closeness of the two planets, and then a day or two as it wanes, which means that these are all sort of running into one another through this particular week. So it's always important to understand that when things are happening like this, it does impact you as above, so below. Now, a lot of how that impacts you is based on your own astrology. So if you have your own astrology chart handy today, that will help a lot. It also is dependent in some ways upon how evolved, please don't take this as a judgment, but how evolved of a soul you are, um, as to whether you've done the work and this transit just kind of is a blip on the screen, and or whether it's something that is a lesson that has to keep, being drummed into you a little bit. So you might have various levels of experience with these particular transits. But I think if you look at them all as an opportunity, these are all opportunities for us to grow and for us to evolve ourselves, then it's not so bad, right? It's not so difficult or something that we have to worry about, right? So I don't say these things to have you worry or, get anxious over, but just to help you understand what it is that might be underneath something that's happening in your life, right? Especially when we have them stacked, like I said, this week, one after the other. So we'll talk this morning about the moon, of course, because now the moon is in Leo, and then we'll talk about each of those transits. I don't think we'll get to the last transit, which is the superior conjunction of Mercury to the sun. But you know what? We're going to meet together on Friday, the day that that happens anyway. So, boom, right? We might be okay to hold that one off. I see people popping in this morning. Good morning, Natasha. It is good to have you with us. I haven't seen you out here in a bit. And I did get your message yesterday. Thank you much. I will attempt today to change that email address for you. Good morning, Narges and Terry. It's good to see you out there. J Lo, hello. And Chester's mom says, hi, everyone. And it is definitely a Monday. I so did not want to get up this morning. But it would have been easier to get up, I suppose, if we didn't have this low cloud deck hanging, down. Yesterday morning, I got up quite early because the sun was like right in my face when I got up. So let's start with the moon in Leo today. Oh yeah, one other thing that I want to spend some time talking about today And this was actually brought to my attention on Friday during the broadcast when Pauline asked me the question about where is Chiron. And for the longest time, Chiron had been sitting at the gate 51. And that was creating some very difficult, wounded situations to come up in our lives. Um, Various, depending on how each one of you have your wound configured in your own chart. And the gate 51 is called the gate of shock, right? So I didn't realize that that Chiron had actually moved off the gate of shock and now is in the gate of conclusion. So I want to spend some time talking about that today and how that impacts each of you. So that was the other thing. All right. So moon in Leo. Today the moon has, well, yesterday afternoon the moon transited into the sign of Leo. And at that point in time, of course, the moon came into a, configuration with an opposition to Pluto in Aquarius. So there could have been, some very powerful energies running through the atmosphere yesterday afternoon. So if you were impacted yesterday by some kind of powerful um, emotional reaction, perhaps, or some kind of power struggle between you and someone else, or through some kind of transformation, that would have been why, right? The moon made it emotional, and the planet Pluto made it some kind of struggle or some kind of need to transform something in our lives. But now the moon has since moved off that particular degree, so we're not in that square today or in that opposition today. So today, though, we can talk more about, well, what does it mean when the moon is transiting through the sign of Leo? How does it impact you? Right? Because you may or may not have your moon in Leo. I have my moon in Virgo. Uh, look to see where your own moon is. And then whatever relationship your natal moon is to the transiting moon, in my case, it would be in a semi sextile because Leo and Virgo are neighboring signs. So that means today I might need to coordinate some things, or I might need to maybe adjust some things in order to make good use of this energy. So it's always good to know where the transiting moon is in relationship to your own moon, but also to the other planets. But that might take some more time for you to understand what your chart is all about. But there are some key themes that pop up when the moon is transiting through any of the signs. And some of the key themes today would be about self expression and creativity. Leo is a sign of the heart and of individual authenticity or individual expression. It is where the unique you lives, like your passion, right? What is it that makes you passionate? Or what is it that you are passionate about? Or what triggers, joy within you. So when the moon is transiting through Leo, we're all being asked to step up into our creativity and bring a level of playfulness to the game, or make it a game, or maybe remember that life is somewhat of a game. So the transit itself is fun loving energy. It's more encouraging the activities around joy, playfulness, and entertainment, right? Let's go have some fun and do some things. So, our creative abilities are enhanced at this moment in time. So, take advantage of your creativity, of your individuality. There is also a leadership quality in the sign of Leo, and the moon here brings up the emotional support for leadership. And that might mean the confidence to be the leader in your chosen field. Maybe you feel more inclined to take charge or to assert yourself or to lead others, right? These next couple of days. The moon is in Leo until tomorrow late evening. And it might even be Wednesday early morning for those of you on the East Coast. So we have a couple of days worth of this energy of playfulness and then leadership and confidence. The moon in Leo actually boosts our confidence, making it easier for us to pursue our goals and for us to have this strong sense of belief in ourselves, right? That's always an awesome thing to have. Leo is a sign that appreciates being the center of attention or appreciates recognition. So there's there's a check-in that we all need to do when the moon is around in the sign of Leo around what are we doing and why are we doing what we're doing, right? Are we seeking attention? If we're seeking, and there's nothing wrong, by the way, in seeking attention unless you're doing it in the most negative of ways, right? We can seek attention through, you know, all kinds of things that are not very positive, but positive seeking of attention, might be actually displaying your passion to the world, sharing what you know with others. But you might also find yourself craving acknowledgement for the work that you do or for your efforts at something. So it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it can turn into a quest for being the center of attention, which can, lead to other problems. Leo has a very generous nature too. So the moon in Leo really triggers our generosity, and sometimes the emotional triggers with Leo can become drama, right? Dramas. Leo is known as the drama king of the zodiac. There is the drama that goes with love and with romance, which is also ruled by the moon in Leo. This time is a time to strengthen those heartfelt connections that we have with one another, whether it's family or a significant other, your friends, colleagues, that type of thing. It is a time for us then to really feel from the heart, feel into our lives through the heart. So, the practical applications of this moon is really about embracing your creativity. And that might mean whatever creative projects you're involved with. If you have a talent or skill that you are sharing with others, this is a prime time to do that. It is a time to step into leadership. Take the initiative. Don't wait for someone else to prompt you to do something that you've been wanting to do. Take that initiative. Have confidence in the actions that you take. And it doesn't mean that everything's going to be 100% successful, but nothing will be successful if you don't try, right? If you don't step out there. Seek, but also give appreciation and recognition. Acknowledge people for the things that they do for you, no matter how small, right? Someone does something nice for you, acknowledge that person for that. Appreciate the small things in life as well as the big things in life. It's all worthy of being appreciated. Um, Leo is, like I said, of the heart. So it is a time for heartfelt connections. So connect emotionally with people, right? Don't stand back and be too detached, right? Don't hesitate to get your heart in there. Acts of kindness and generosity are also a big deal during a transit of the moon in Leo. So, some things to watch out for. Leo is a sign that we think of as ego, pride, right? The ego, craving the attention can sometimes become prideful. So we have to manage that. We have to manage humility. We have to practice humility in some cases, right? While our confidence is high, we want to be mindful of not letting pride or ego dominate our interactions with people, right? Balance self assurance and humility, right? We're going to play the balancing game there. Avoid arrogance, narcissism, right? We don't want to come out or come uh, over to people in a way that makes them feel like we're being overly self centered or that we're, it's all about me. Even if it is all about you, just recognize that you are an individual that's also part of a group and or part of a collective, and that everybody has gifts and talents to share, right? You are not that special, even though you're special, right? I hope you understand what I mean by that. Handle dramatic emotions, right? Make sure that because our emotions can be over the top dramatic right now and a little more intense perhaps for some of you, especially if you have the moon natally in Leo. And I know I see a couple of you out there that I know have that natal moon in Leo. Um, Avoid overreacting to things or becoming overwhelmed by emotions. Remember that right now you might be being triggered to be a little bit over the top. So come back down to earth. Be a little bit, circumspect about what you're saying or what you're doing. Use constructive expression. Remember all of those planets in Gemini that are teaching us about communication, which is 50% speaking, 50% listening. Take care what you say what you say, and whether or not it was appropriate for you to say anything at all, right? Be careful with that. It's a great time for creative visualization, right? What you want to create. How do you get the image from inside your mind out and into the world? You might do some creative visualization techniques, maybe create a vision board. These It's a good time to do this. Affirmations, if you're so inclined, for being heart centered or being in the flow of love and romance, and giving back to others. That's always a big thing that we can do, because that act of generosity is a magnet that brings generousness back to you. So the moon for the next couple of days in a very heartfelt place, and utilize it to your benefit, right? But also remember that it isn't always just about you, right? There are other people involved as well. Let's see, people checking in this morning that I missed earlier. Patty, good morning. And Asa, nice to have you with us. She's one of our moon in Leo people. Debbie Tippett Tumiel, late. It's all right. You got here just in time. And Asa said this is a natal lunar return for me, Leo in the ninth. So you're growing, expanding. Tracy Evans, good morning. Debbie Tibbetts Tumiel, geez, having connecting issues in my auto today. I'll have to listen later. Have a great week, Janet. Thank you very much. And Chase's graduation was freaking awesome. Now I can tell you guys, I made him as a graduation present because he's going off to school in August. He goes to Pacific Lutheran University. And, it's not like, too far from here, maybe 90 miles, 100 miles at most. And I thought, wouldn't it be nice for him to have something of himself, of this, major accomplishment of, getting into this college, and he's going there to play football, and he's going to be playing lacrosse. And I had this picture of him when PLU was courting him to be a player for their team. They sent him a photo of himself. It was his body in a uniform for the football team at the school. And it's, all very tough looking, and had his number 70 on his chest. And it was such a striking picture. And I thought, wouldn't it be nice to put that as a diamond painting for him? So I sent the picture in. You can send pictures into Amazon, they'll turn them into diamond paintings. And so I did that in April, and I've been working on it diligently. I got it done, framed and matted for him, wrapped it up, and I swear he almost cried when he opened it up yesterday. It was so awesome. It turned out so good. If I do pat myself on the back, it was a lot of work. And I have a lot of things going on, and it was big, right? It was almost, 20 by 24 maybe. I don't know. It's huge. So anyway, I got that done for him, and he loved it. And the graduation itself was just amazing, but long. Luckily, it was a nice day. Okay, let's see who else is out there. Amanda J, good morning to you. It's good to see you. She said her natal moon is in Leo in the fourth house, home and family. Londa is special. She's a Leo. She's a triple Leo because I believe she has her rising and her sun and her moon all in Leo. I'm pretty sure, Londa. And I know you're special. You're all special. It's just you don't need to be special, just be you, right? That is special. TD Hawk, good morning. And so Narges says, thank you for the reminder. Eighth house, Leo moon. Look at that. We have several Leo moons here in the house, and they all have it in different parts of their chart, which I always think is interesting too. TD Hawk says, my moon is in Libra in the eighth house, but the sun is in Leo, so you're impacted. And by the way, all of y'all have Leo in your chart somewhere. I have Leo sitting at my second house. and I have probably 4. I have Mars, Black Moon, Lilith, Uranus, and my North Node all in Leo. So while my own moon is not in Leo, you can bet I'm being impacted by the moon in Leo because the moon is moving across all those Leo planets, right? Which have probably just started to get impacted because the first one starts at 15 degrees. And when I drew the chart up this morning, the moon was at 10 degrees. So I haven't even started the impact yet. At any rate, so it's always good to know your chart because then you understand why things might be happening the way they're happening. And by the way, good morning, Jacqueline. I saw you out there as well. Christine says, that was a wonderful gift. Congrats to Chase. Yeah, it's amazing to me. These, Thursday he graduates again for his associate's degree. And so I'll be going to another graduation for him. And I did take, maybe I'll post. I was thinking about this, you guys. Just, bear with me for a second. I will get back to astrology. That when I looked at my website the other day, because I'm thinking about all the things I want to put on there, that I have not personalized my website at all. Like, yeah, there's a picture of me, but I am a family first kind of person. There's not one picture of my family on the website. So I have to consider, I talk about them all the time. Maybe you'd like to put a face with who I'm talking about. I don't know, but I'm thinking I might start to do that. You guys can, chime in and let me know what you think. I know it's always a little risky to put family pictures out, but um, anyway, I would love to do that. Um, J-Lo, I have progressed Leo ascendant and Venus. And guess what, J-Lo, I have my progressed sun in Leo at the 28th degree. So it's almost now on top of my North Node. So let's go back to astrology, shall we? J-Lo says yes. Today I wanted to talk about transiting Chiron. And, thanks to Pauline on Friday who brought this up. I don't always, in astrology, sometimes we just don't hear about some of the more important yet maybe more obscure pieces of the puzzle. Yet Chiron to me is pretty darn important, and I think in my own mind sometimes I neglect Chiron. So like in my little book here that I use, my ephemeris, that all of you can also get a copy of, um, Chiron isn't in it. And so I don't, when I'm looking at it, I see everything I need for the planets, but not Chiron. I have to go to a separate book, Chiron Ephemeris, 1921 to 2050, so that I can see where Chiron is. And so I don't always pull this book out. But when Pauline said that on Friday, I said, oh, I best look and see where it is now. Because what if it's not in 51 anymore? And guess what? It wasn't, which is it will be retrograding later in the year and will be back in gate 51. But what does it mean now that he's moved into gate 42, which is called the gate of conclusion? In the Gene Keys, we call it celebration. So I'd rather be in celebration over just conclusion, right? That doesn't sound sexy, but celebration does. So yet Chiron represents the major archetype of the wound that we carry, or the wounded healer, the wound that we're healing from. Now, each of you have Chiron somewhere in your chart. So you have your own individual path of wounding and healing. But we also have a collective one. So that's what I'm talking about today is the collective one. And since you are a part of the collective, what Chiron does is also impacting you, right? So there's the deep personal wounding that we have to acknowledge, but then there's also the deep collective wounding that we are also needing to integrate and acknowledge, integrate and heal, right? That's the whole path. So when we're at the gate 42, we're talking about endings and completion. So the gate 42, which by the way is sitting on the root center, moving up toward the sacral. I might have just said that wrong. It's an energy that is all about how we bring something to a completion or a conclusion. So the word conclusion works, but we actually need to know that this might be the completion of a cycle, not just not just an ending of a thing like a project or something, a relationship or a job, but a bigger ending of a cycle that you've been in. And it's more of a natural conclusion, right? So it's really emphasizing the importance of closure and a resolution to any unfinished business that you have. So I was thinking about this morning about how maybe what happens during this period of time, and I can say it's been happening to me, is that issues that you might not have healed completely, um, or haven't resolved completely in your life likely are coming up right now for that resolution. So be aware, right? If you're seeing a noticeable reliving of patterns, um, even ones that you might have thought that you had already healed, then that's what this gate is doing because there's something left there in the cycle for you to work with. And it's time for reflection and integration, right? On past experience and the integration of the lessons learned from that experience. So while the celebration is, hey, you know what? I'm realizing that I've really come a long way in healing this particular wound. That is appropriate as a closure, right? I can close that chapter. If there's more there that's come up, then an appropriate action might be to journal what it is that still lies in that, wound for you to heal. So, life lessons, right? This is about life lessons and the growth and maturation that comes from the experiencing of wounds and the completion of those cycles of evolution in your life as you move through each of the different lessons or difficulties, challenges that arise, then they become healed. And then it contributes to your overall development, even if this gate isn't the one that you have your own natal Chiron at. Okay, I hope that makes sense. And in this case, then um, you might be looking at, how do I bring something to an end? How do I bring something to a close? Like a chapter, right? The end of that chapter. This is where we're gaining wisdom through experience, right? Taking anytime we are completing a cycle, and anytime, for example, when we have planets at 29 degrees of a sign, we're doing the same thing, right? We're looking backwards a bit to move all of the experiences forward and put them in their proper perspective. So, this is a time for understanding your experiences. And, you may not totally understand or get it, but at least it can be healed. And the healing then is through completion, right? A healing through completion. It brings the opportunity to address and heal the deep seated wounds, maybe related to endings, things that have ended in your past, or unresolved past issues. So, of course, they're going to come up, right? That's just, they're going to come up. It's a time for finding closure. And any unhealed, unresolved, unfinished business, right? It's time for it to come up. And then experience personal growth and the gaining of wisdom yourself as you are buttoning up each of those experiences, learning from the past, reflecting on the past cycles that you have been in, the lessons that you've been taught, and use the knowledge to grow and mature that next step. Right? Gaining deeper wisdom for yourself, sharing insights as you go, because a part of the healing journey isn't just the fact that you've experienced the wound and healed the wound. Quite frequently, people come into our lives that have or are experiencing the same wounds that we have, and we get to share our insights. As we're healing and integrating our own experiences, we can share that wisdom with others, helping them to navigate their own cycles of growth and conclusion, right? That's why we're going through this, right? And we're all at various levels based on your age, really, because with the cycle of Chiron, we don't get to the return until we're 50 to 52 years old. So if you're younger than that, you're still amassing maybe some of the experiences that are of a wounding nature. When you're at that return, you start to see the wisdom that you've gained from those experiences, and then beyond that, you begin to take on the mantle of wisdom, a wise leader, perhaps, or sharing of your wisdom with others that are going through those kinds of experiences. So, reflect and integrate, big deal. Seek closure, anything that's unresolved. This is the time to resolve, right? Make a concerted effort to resolve things. And resolution, as a natural part of it, is forgiveness, right? Forgiveness and release. Um, Practicing that, is allowing the lingering regrets or resentments to just dissipate and or disappear even, giving you closure and allowing you to move forward. Embrace change, right? This is, closures and conclusions and celebrations always precede a new beginning, right? So something coming up. Um, just recognize the end of one cycle is the beginning of another cycle, and it forces us to be adaptable, to be able to move and change with the flow of energy that's moving through us. So, what will we have to watch out for during this transit? Which, by the way, oh, wrong book, got to go to this one. I knew the dates, and I should have given you the dates that you'll be experiencing this. So, actually, on May 2nd this year, that is when Chiron changed from the gate 51 to the 42, and until October 24th, right? So from now until October 24th, on October 25th, he'll retrograde back into the 51, just for a short time, just for a few months, and into 2025, he's back almost through the full. From March to the end of 2025, he will be at the gate 42. So if you're not completely integrated by the end of this cycle, October 24th, you'll have some time next year to be able to complete some more. So really understanding this particular gate is an important thing. And in your own human design, you might have that gate open, which means it's white, which means it's undefined, which means that you experience that energy through others most of the time. And now it has become defined, colored in, right? Or where it's broadcasting through you now, and that means you're right in the mix of all of this. You're needing to work through most of these, things that we're talking about, healing old wounds, etc. Now, if you have that gate defined, meaning in your own natal human design chart, it's colored in, right? That means now you've just added another planet to it, except like for JLo, she has her natal Chiron there. So in her human design, it's already defined by Chiron. So now she's coming into her Chiron return. So she's at that few years period of time where Chiron is coming back and visiting, and then maybe we'll retrograde backwards over that JLo and then go forward again. So it's a process of the healing and the integration of the healing. So this is a time for the ceremony of closure, right? What can we do? Maybe how sometimes at full moons you see the ritual where you write down what it is you want to release and then you burn it, something like that, or putting in your journal, this is, I am done being this kind of person, or I am done letting people do this to me. On this date in time, I am healing this wound, whatever, right? Whatever those things are. But it is a time for reflection for sure, right? Because you don't really go forward until you've really reflected on um, what has been going on in your life and processed through what has gone on or what is going on. It's time to heal old wounds by facing your pain. Face the pain. Address those deep seated wounds, and it can be painful. And yet, allowing yourself to feel and experience those emotions can be very cathartic, can be very healing. So, patience for yourself in this healing process, patience for others if they're going through some form of healing process. It's a big deal. Um, so completion rituals, healing practices, Maybe you need to reach out for a reading or some kind of therapy. Things like even massage therapy can help release, tension that's built up in certain places of the body that can actually bring on the healing and open up for that. Counseling, professional support if need be, in order to provide guidance and tools for healing. Plus, mindfulness and meditation. Never underestimate the power of that prayer or meditation. And then share your wisdom, right? You all have wisdom, whether you're in your youth or you're in your 30s, you're in your midlife, you are in your elder age. You have wisdom to share with others. And it will seem sort of natural at this point in time that people around you might be experiencing something that you can help them with. So make sure you do that. Get involved with others and become a mentor, perhaps. So take it all on, right? Any questions about Chiron in gate 42? Go ahead and put those down here. Um, JLo says, funny thing, even when it retrogrades, I have 51 in the design Chiron. That's not surprising. Um, I would guess this is a very important time of your life, JLo, as you're awakening. Something inside of you is awakening. And maybe what's happening is you've been awakened, right? Because Chiron was already in 51. And now it is a time to let go of the cycle of wounding as it has been in your life. And in going on or going forward, it's time to take on that mantle of wise woman, right? And become healed and help others with their healing process. Um, I'm just looking to see if there is any other questions. None. Okay, so let's go on to some of the transits. If you still have questions about Chiron, though, don't hesitate to put those down there. I'll come back and see. So yesterday, we had the first of many this week transits where planets were coming together in squares. So, as I said at the very beginning of the show this morning, the squares are challenges. It's where we have obstacles that we come into. And yet, it also provides us or catalyzes for us the healing process or the getting through the challenge, the rising up to meet the challenge, right? So we without squares, we would kind of not go anywhere very far, very fast. So the squares are very beneficial, even though they can be very difficult. Okay. So just know that. So the first square on yesterday was the Sun in Gemini in a square to Saturn in Pisces. So Gemini and Pisces are 90 degrees from one another. The Sun in Gemini at the degree that it was in, and Saturn in the degree that it was in, brought these two in a square. And there are challenges that test our resolve at this point, our patience, our discipline, because Saturn represents the discipline it takes to go through the process of breaking down walls or enacting appropriate boundaries as it sits in Pisces. And Gemini, of course, the planet of communication. So we're balancing the desire for communication and learning and flexibility with the demands of responsibility, structure, and realism. So that's what we're coming up against. So the key theme is about communication and learning versus that responsibility and structure. And with the Sun in Gemini, it highlights those themes of communication, of new ideas, of sharing wisdom, of learning new things, adapting to new ideas. Saturn in Pisces brings the focus on responsibilities, limitations, and the need for structure, particularly in areas related to spirituality and compassion and our dreams and our imagination. So we need to be able to ground in our ideals and bring our fantasies or our imagination into reality. So there's tension and conflict here between those parts of us. So the first thing we could really think of here in the practical of it all would be to manage our responsibilities. right? To have a balancing act going on, focusing on finding a balance between our desire for flexibility and our responsibilities, right? We got to be able to have both. So we have to ensure that we're meeting our obligations while still allowing time for freedom. And I guess another question could be is, are you taking on the correct obligations? Right? The whole square challenge could be in the realization that I now find myself obligated to something that I didn't want to be obligated to or for. All right. Time management, right? Gemini, scattering energy, scattering our time, taking on too much, too many things. While Saturn, let's be effective in our time management. So prioritize the things that you absolutely have to do, set a realistic goal, and then avoid feeling overwhelmed by the number of things that you have to do. Right? So in other words, you want to have, your things that you must do, and yet that list doesn't have to be 20 miles long. It could be just a few things that you really have to get done, and then you can move on to the next things, okay? To the fun things. Deal with authority, deal with limitations, right? Those are big things during this particular transit. Um Challenges, feeling restricted. I think anytime the sun is squared by Saturn, and at least twice a year this is happening, that we might feel limited in some way. Whether we're limited because we can't quite bring our imagination into reality, or we have taken on responsibilities and we can't get out of those. Whatever it is, right? We might feel that that we're kind of in this tug of war, trying to balance that need for freedom against the restrictions and limitations. So focus on what you can control in your schedule, perhaps, and work within the boundaries that you've set. You don't have to set such rigid boundaries that you don't feel free. But if you set boundaries, try to work within those boundaries, or else you'll find yourself, failing in your responsibilities. And that brings up its own difficulties in the day or in the next couple of days. Resist pessimism. That's a difficult one because if you're falling into pessimism and discouragement, then you're not utilizing Jupiter and Gemini in its highest and best, which brings in a dose of optimism. So, use the challenges that come up in the next day or two, as opportunities to build your resilience and to strengthen your character, to really be the stronger person, to really take a measure of control, even though I'm not sure I like that word, but take on self-regulation, right? No one else is in charge of your schedule, just you, right? So you get to choose what you say yes or no to. And in some cases where, let's say it's a job that you are at and you have obligations at the job, some of those things you can't really, I mean, you're always kind of having to balance what you want versus what your employer, let's say, wants. But you're always free to have an attitude of gratitude or an attitude of peace or an attitude of let's get this done, right? That's what you can control or regulate within yourself, even if you're in an obligation that you can't necessarily let go of, right? So it's your attitude that you get to control. Now, avoiding rigidity, getting caught in a rut, right? Sometimes we get into that rut. We want to allow some flexibility and the ability for us to adapt to changing circumstances. And that's kind of personal for each one of us. Each one of us have, you know, uh, a tendency, maybe you get very rigid when someone wants you to do something outside of what your schedule says, right? So then maybe that's where rigidity is for you, or it might be applying to your relationships or to your own sense of what. freedom you have in the day to do whatever it is that you want to do. So navigate the challenges by being able to be self-regulated. That sounds easier said than done. Okay, now in the next transit, which is happening kind of right now, we're in it. It's exact on Wednesday, I believe it is. Um, let's see, that is Mars square Pluto on the 11th. So tomorrow, this becomes exact. So it's already in play, right? And this is Mars having just moved into Taurus on Saturday and now coming into a square immediately with Pluto in Aquarius. So now we have the two power players, one that Mars that's very active and dynamic and creating, pathways of action, and Pluto in Aquarius that is innovating and creating transformation in our lives. And that means that this action and assertiveness in the stable, persistent sign of Taurus clashes a bit with Pluto, the transformation and power broker in the innovative and forward thinking Aquarian energy. So we might find ourselves feeling quite stuck or not being able to be as free to move forward in the way that we want to. And that can create a power struggle or a conflict. And it can be intense when we have Pluto involved, right? Mars and Pluto actually, though, work pretty well together typically. But again, it depends on since they're co rulers of the sign of Scorpio, right? But when you have Mars in Taurus, he's kind of debilitated because he's in a sign that is opposite of one that he's a ruler of, right? Taurus is opposite of Scorpio. And then Mars or Pluto is actually in a better position. So the power struggle is real, the intensity is real, the pressure of forward thinking and forward moving and progression is very powerful right now, very strong. And yet the conflict can arise because Mars in Taurus has to be more deliberate, has to be more patient. Is it any wonder we might feel challenged during this particular transit, right? There could be control issues that pop up, especially the struggle for control or dominance within yourself or within your groups or your family or other, people that you are engaged with, especially in work environments where you might have clashes between how we get things done or not. So we have to be aware of that. There's a real powerful theme of transformation and change that runs through this, though. Pluto's emphasis is really on the deep transformational changes that we need to make, right? From the inside out, from the depths to the surface. And that means that significant shifts can happen in our lives through facing challenges and through overcoming obstacles. So the willingness, even sometimes just to face the challenge, can bring on the transformation, right? If you're willing, and if you're willing to release the old, right? Releasing the old, it's time to let go of the old patterns, the old habits, and behaviors that no longer serve you. I've been saying this for quite the while, actually. A lot of the planetary energies have been speaking to this for us. All right. So persistence and determination is required. Mars and Taurus brings that steady, persistent, determined energy. Despite the challenges, the aspect encourages us to stay determined and to keep pushing forward, but not forcing, right? Keep putting one foot in front of the other, one foot in front of the other, using the grounded energy of Taurus to focus your action on the strategy or on the goals that you have, and understanding that you can only step forward one at a time sometimes. And that's what this is right now. I think the people that will be most um, frustrated perhaps by this will be your manifesting generators who are used to being able to juggle and move many things forward, and maybe the manifestors, right? Generators and projectors and reflectors tend to have learned a little bit more patience, maybe. right? It's not to say that everybody who's those types is more patient, but our lives have shown us we have to take one step in front of the other. But those of you who are used to having lots get done in a day might find themselves a little more frustrated with this because it's more deliberate action, right? Deliberately. So, navigate the power struggles, stay calm and grounded. Be cool, calm, and collected in the face of strife or of whatever comes up in terms of relationships, or take the time to think before acting, right? That's a big deal here. Have healthy boundaries. Don't let people push your buttons, right? Don't be that person that gets, pushed to blow up, right? Don't do that because that can end up being a bad scenario. Embrace the transformational energy by releasing what no longer serves you. Focus on personal growth. What's the next step in my growth? Don't give up on yourself, right? Don't get into pessimism. Be persistent. Maybe even set clear objectives for yourself, right? That plan of action that says, okay, I'm going to get this done and then I'm going to go to this. That allows you to make steady progress. And that's really what this transformation is all about, this square. Avoid impulsiveness and aggression, and manage stress and tension and anxiety. So, stress management techniques, right? Seek support if you've got a lot of anger that's coming up, or, I'm interested in this whole thing because of Chiron being at gate 42, because we already have one thing that's trying to bring things up for release or for completion. And now we have this very powerful transformational energy, and you might not be able to do it alone. You might need to seek help from somebody that you trust, right? So seek support if necessary, especially if you begin to see that you're getting overwhelmed, but also practice your own um, calming of your anxiety, right? Recognize that your mind sometimes right now could be your own worst enemy because it's in hyperdrive, or it seems like it's in hyperdrive, right? And actually, with all those planets in Gemini right now, it could be extremely hyper. And it might mean that you need to get outside. If this is all building up, you might need to go get some physical release, right? Go for a hike or a walk, or do some running, do some gardening, things that can release stress, right? Or physical. Mars is a physical planet. He's supported by doing physical things. So, take nature walks, right? Grounding yourself in nature is also very calming. So while this is a few days worth of maybe a week of this kind of transformational energy, the potential for deep transformation is so beautiful here, right? In being able to help you get through your life, get through those changes, those cycles of change. Now on, let's see, Mercury squares Saturn on the 12th, so that'll be Wednesday. So on Sunday, the Sun squared Saturn, and of course, Mercury and the Sun are headed for a conjunction later in the week. So now we also have um, Mercury coming into the square with Saturn. So now what we bring about is a period of tension between communication, thinking, learning, and the structure and discipline and limitations of Saturn. So it creates challenging maybe in expressing our ideas or dealing with restrictions, anybody that we see that wants to hold us back in some way, and in managing, of course, our responsibilities effectively. So the first thing up is communication challenges, right? Difficulty expressing your ideas. Mercury in Gemini is quick, is adaptable and communicative, but the square to Saturn can create obstacles expressing thoughts clearly. Like, how do I say this as concisely as possible? Or how do I take this very big idea and be able to break it into pieces that people can understand? And if I am unable to do that, then the potential for miscommunication is there. So there's an increased likelihood that we're going to be involved in misunderstandings in the first place, right? It just is there. We may have delays in communication, right? We send an email, but someone doesn't get it, and or they didn't see it, that kind of thing. So we might have a little bit of extra effort for a few days to make sure that we're heard um, correctly, understood correctly, right? So ensure clarity. You might have to say, okay, did I make that clear? Was that understandable? Did you get that? Mental discipline and focus could be out the window if we're not careful because of all of the Gemini energy that's, flowing. And it causes us to scatter, right? Or we get, into too many different things. So structured thinking could be our best friend, but it can clash with Mercury's tendency to be flexible and going from one idea to the other. So focus on organizing your thoughts and information before you say or do anything with that information. Somebody told me on Saturday or Sunday that there was a uh, typo or something in the Mars in Taurus article that I put out on Saturday. I got to go back and check it because I haven't checked it yet. Mental discipline and focus, in this case, toward critical thinking. This aspect does encourage critical thinking, right? It slows our thinking down perhaps a bit. We want to be more thorough and more detailed. Just don't get lost in the details, right? That is the challenge there. Managing our responsibilities. We may feel weighed down by responsibilities or limitations right now. There's like a double dose of that this week. So it's time to be realistic in your approach to how you do what you do, how you take on um, responsibilities, how you decide what it is that you will be responsible for, right? Make sure you're balancing creativity and practicality, right? Be those ideas have to have if you want to bring something into the physical world, this is a great time because we can discipline our thinking a little better. Still might have some challenges though. So the practical of all of this is about effective communication. And that's where things can get a little weird, right? We may be overwhelmed and frustrated because people aren't hearing us, aren't understanding us. So slow things down a bit, be more clear, um, deal with your own frustration in not being heard or understood. Maybe, it's time to go out for a walk and come back and try to restate what it was you were trying to say. Avoid rigidity again, right? That's another theme that keeps popping up this week for us to stay out of that. I can't see anything on the other side of these walls, right? Um, Balancing logic because Mercury in Gemini is logical. There's logic here, but you're going to have to balance the logic with the Piscean energy of Saturn at this point, which is taking in the imaginational realm and the fantastical realm so that we can create something new and exciting here based on new ideas and things like that. So, in conclusion, it's a week to be aware of challenges. Don't let them get you down. Don't dive into pessimism. Rise up, be resilient, be aware of these things that are happening. On Friday, when we meet, we'll talk about the superior conjunction of Mercury and the Sun, which is always the signal of a cycle that is in its halfway point, right? The inferior conjunction begins the new Mercury cycle. The superior conjunction is like the full moon, right? So we'll talk about how to bring all of that into some kind of awareness for you. And now let's pull a card. Um, let's see. I think I want an animal card today. And hmm, I think it's just animal today. All right, so let's do this. So funny thing, Sunday, my brother is here in town. My brother and my sister-in-law from way down in SoCal, like at the border of Southern California and Mexico practically. Um, and my daughter brought the new Colette Baron Reed deck over for us to play with, and I said, "Oh, I'm just going to pull a card for my brother who is not metaphysical at all, not metaphysical at all." And I said, "Okay, what do you want to know, brother?" And he said something, they have a new great grandbaby that is coming in July. He said, I want to know about that baby. And I said, okay. So I took the deck and I just started to shuffle it, and these cards flew out. And the card that flew out was healthy, wealthy, healthy, wealthy, and wise, or something like that. And I was like, oh my gosh, right? In answer to his question about what would this grandchild be like. It was so amazing. We get the scarab beetle spirit. Magic works through you. Card 52, which is a 7, so it's spiritual. Look at how beautiful that is. By the way, this is by Colette Baron Reed, the Spirit Animal Oracle. And let's see what 52 is all about. Okay, it came out upright. So we have in ancient Egypt, the scarab beetle was revered for the creative magic of scarab beetle spirit. In ancient Egypt, the scarab beetle was revered, for the creative magic of scarab beetle spirit reminds us that we can bring forth something extraordinary, seemingly out of thin air. Whenever you let your creativity flow through you, Scarab Beetle Spirit reminds you that Spirit has given you the gift of infinite potential. You have an ally as you fashion something new or repurpose the old. Spirit co creates with you, channeling energy through you so that you feel replenished and vitalized as you make magic with what is at hand. Now is the time for great optimism, for you can accomplish anything you desire, and your creative endeavors will come to fruition. Miracles, opportunities, and abundance and love will appear seemingly out of nowhere. I love this. As you allow spirit to work through you and magically manifest what you need. Scarab beetle spirit. Woohoo! All right, you guys. That's awesome. That's it for me today. Thank you so much for joining me. I will see you all on Friday, and we'll talk about the weekend as well as the superior conjunction of Mercury and the Sun. Take care. Bye for now.